Sagittarius and the silent call of truth. Beloved Archer, if these words have found you, it isn't by accident. There are nights when you wake not from a nightmare, but from a whisper. Something subtle brushing the edge of your awareness like wind moving through tall grass. You can't quite name it, yet your chest tightens slightly when a certain person steps into the room. Your breath shifts when a message arrives at an odd hour. Your gaze lingers on a light that flickers as if the universe is blinking in slow acknowledgement. You are not imagining this. You are answering a summons. You have always lived with a horizon in your bones. Even when you sit still, part of you is traveling. Across ideas, across distances, across the inner landscapes where truth does not shout, it glows. Lately that glow has taken the shape of knowing without evidence. A conversation that feels sweet on the surface but leaves ash in your mouth. A smile that seems warm yet cools the air around your ribs. Compliments that land like feathers dipped in iron. For a long time you called this sensitivity. Now you will call it sight. There may be a woman at the edge of this feeling, familiar, gracious, even adored by others. Someone who has touched your world with careful hands. She has not arrived with a blade. Her tools are smaller and sharper. Glances, softened phrasing. A story retold with one key detail turned upside down. Nothing dramatic enough to accuse. Nothing obvious enough to hold up like evidence. Only a slow rearranging of how others see you. Like a portrait slightly smudged each time it is passed around the circle. Your mind searches for logic, your body already knows. This opening is not a call to battle. It is an invitation to stand in a brighter frequency than the one that once made you doubt yourself. The universe is not asking you to expose anyone or to win an argument. It is guiding you to recognize the difference between the light you carry and the light others imitate. When you recognize it, doors will open without force and close without noise. Some endings arrive like thunder. Others arrive like evening, quiet, inevitable, merciful. So breathe, Sagittarius. You need no proof to honor what your soul feels. The arrow you hold is truth, and it does not need to be fired at anyone to be real. It only needs to be aimed inward, toward the center of your own seeing. From here we begin. Gate 1, the shadow behind the smile. Unmasking subtle betrayal. Sagittarius, your journey through this first gate begins with a sensation you can neither deny nor fully explain. The delicate pressure of air changing when you enter a room. The way your shoulders tense even as your face softens into a polite smile. The aftertaste of a conversation that should have been nourishing but leaves you oddly depleted. You are not chasing ghosts. You are reading currents. Yours is the sign of the horizon. But your truest compass has always been inner light. When that light flickers, it is not because you lack courage. It is because something around you has tilted just enough to jar your truth. In that subtle quake, a story begins to loosen its pieces. One of those pieces is a woman, familiar, gracious, praised by many for her kindness, who has not cut you with a blade, but has instead rearranged your reflection when others are not looking. She does not wound loudly. She edits. She edits the memory of a moment you shared and places a different emphasis on a word. She recounts an event with a detail reversed. She allows a compliment to hover in the air just long enough to curdle into implication. Nothing you can pin down, everything your body still knows. You feel the quiet withdrawal of people you once trusted. The delayed replies that make your chest sink for reasons you cannot name. The way a room feels colder when she is present though her laughter is perfectly timed. And because you are generous, your first instinct is to turn the question inward. Am I being unkind? Am I jealous? Am I too sensitive? This is the oldest trap for your sign, to suspect your sight because others cannot see. But your intuition is not a courtroom that requires evidence. It is a lantern, and lanterns do not argue with the night. They simply make it clear. There is a memory you keep returning to, not because it was dramatic but because it was precise. She touched your arm while you were speaking about something tender, perhaps a dream, perhaps a doubt, and said the right words with the wrong temperature. It was as if her voice wore a coat that did not belong to the weather. You felt your own flame pull back an inch, as if to guard itself. You smiled through it, you always do. The conversation moved on, it always does. But your body filed it under truth. This is the subtle betrayal. Not the obvious act you can call out, but the repeated micro-tilts that leave you questioning the shape of your own light. She does not need to push you. She needs only to invite others to see you through a thin film of fog, and you, the most honest of the fire signs, Begin to exhaust yourself polishing windows that were smeared by hands you did not watch move. The first gate asks for no vengeance. It asks for vision. Vision begins by believing your first feeling. Note the difference between a wound that distorts perception and a perception that protects you from a wound. The wound screams, perception hums. The wound insists on proof. Perception offers a knowing that is quiet and round and steady. When you stand in that knowing, you begin to see patterns you once dismissed as coincidence. Her praise is always most effusive when others are listening. Her questions are framed with care, but the answers she draws out of you are later carried elsewhere like cups of water poured into thirsty hands that do not wish you well. She is talented at being needed. You are talented at being sincere. This is the alchemy that once made you vulnerable. It will now make you free. Freedom begins with a boundary you do not announce. You will not accuse. You will simply refuse to leak. You will practice speaking less where your spirit tightens. Not from fear but from reverence for your own energy. You will stop over-explaining decisions that come from a clear place. You will let silence be the complete sentence it has always been. Watch how the dynamic shifts when you no longer feed it. Those who thrive on borrowed light grow restless in honest shade. Those who needed your openness to shape a narrative will find nothing to hold. This is not a power play. It is a calibration. You are deciding to match your generosity with discernment. The archer does not shoot every arrow into every wind. She chooses the breeze that honors her aim. Let us ground this in life as it is lived. Imagine a Sagittarian designer in a close-knit creative team. The colleague in question arrives early, brings coffee, asks about your weekend with luminous eyes. She loves your ideas, she says so often. But in meetings, she introduces a concept that looks suspiciously like the one you shared with her over lunch, with one element shifted, just enough to claim originality. When the director praises her, she turns to you with a smile and mouths thank you in a way that feels less like gratitude and more like a warning shot wrapped in lace. Afterward, she hugs you, whispers you're brilliant, and somehow you leave feeling small. You try to let it go. You try to be bigger than it. You try to shrug off the sting. Weeks pass. Your sense of belonging erodes by degrees so slight that no single moment can be presented as proof. Then one afternoon you overhear her telling a new hire a story about you. A story you recognize but do not consent to, ending with a soft laugh that suggests you are a bit fragile, a bit intense, a bit hard to read. The laugh is gentle enough to sound harmless. It lands like frost on young leaves. That evening, alone in your apartment, you touch the place in your chest that aches. You say aloud very quietly, I am not imagining this. Your room seems to widen. Your breath deepens. The lantern does what lanterns do. Another example for the heart. A Sagittarian man who gives freely, who hosts, who includes everyone. There is a friend of a friend who becomes indispensable in the group, organizing, connecting, always in the photos at the center. She asks him intimate questions and listens with a focus that feels like warmth. Later, he learns secondhand that she has been reframing his openness as instability, his spontaneity as irresponsibility, his long silences as sulking. No one confronts him. They simply begin to check in less. He answers one message, then waits a week for a reply that never comes. He tells himself he is busy, that everyone is busy. Meanwhile, she sends him articles about communication styles and the importance of being understood. There is always a solution in her hand that addresses a problem she quietly created. One night, his intuition breaks the surface cleanly, the way a fish leaps and silver slices the moonlight. He does not send a message. He does not gather evidence. He decides. He redirects his attention to a project he loves, to a volunteer commitment he has been postponing, to early mornings that are his alone. He is not cold. He is clear. In the clarity, the circle that once orbited around engineered narratives loses gravity. The right people drift back along different currents. He does not explain. He does not narrate. He simply lives in a frequency where what is false cannot breathe. Sagittarius, you need no permission to honor your body's intelligence. Your shoulders know before your mind admits. Your breath speeds and slows like a messenger tapping Morse code against your ribs. The ancient you, older than this lifetime, older than this century, has walked through enough camps and courts to recognize the scent of envy disguised as incense. Trust it. Every time you honor that knowing, your system recalibrates. Your sleep steadies. Your appetite returns. Your creativity begins to spark in corners it abandoned to self-defense. You remember what it feels like to enter a room and feel no need to scan. You remember who you were before you were made to doubt your own warmth. There is also grace in this gate, and it is important. The woman whose shadow has complicated your light is not the villain of your story. She is the weather pattern that taught you to read the sky. Your work is not to punish her. Your work is to withdraw your consent from the game she plays. When you stop offering your openness as material for her narratives, she will have no choice but to sit with her own reflection. Whether she learns from it is not yours to manage. What is yours is the sanctity of your frequency. Keep it clean. When her name arises, you will speak neither poison nor praise, only what is true and necessary. You will not agree to be edited. As you anchor into this, watch for subtle reversals. People who drifted may begin to hover at the edges again, not with apologies, but with softened eyes and softer questions. You do not have to open doors that once closed. You may if it serves your peace. The point is no longer to be seen accurately by everyone. The point is to see yourself with such accuracy that no one's blurred lens can tempt you off center. This is the quiet power of Gate 1, the refusal to outsource your knowing. You will notice your physical spaces calling for renewal. This too is part of unmasking. The blanket that suddenly feels heavy with old stories, the object on a shelf that seems to thrum with a memory you are done carrying, the gift you kept out of obligation. One afternoon you will begin to move these things gently. You will open a window and watch dust release its claim on the sill. It will feel ceremonial without ritual, sacred without announcement. You are not tidying. You are unbraiding your field from what kept you second-guessing. As you do, new air enters. The room feels wider though it has not grown. The light looks honest. What of justice? In the world of frequency, justice is alignment. You need not hunt it. When you return to yourself, the structures built on misrepresentation lose charge. Without fuel, their generators become quiet. Without audience, their theater goes dark. Meanwhile, the simple architecture of your days, work that matches your integrity, friendships that do not require translation, love that does not punish depth, begins to hold. This is not revenge. It is equilibrium. The temptation will arise to craft the perfect explanation for the people who ask why you have stepped back. Resist it. Speak gently, briefly, and then step aside. The more you narrate what happened, the more you re-enter the old field to justify breathing your own air. You owe no one a dissertation on how you learn to listen to yourself. Let your life be the document. Let your steadiness be the proof. Let your joy return without commentary. In time, the woman who once diffused you will stand at a distance you did not have to calculate. She will reach for the old levers and find them uninstalled. You did not glue them down. You simply removed them from your side of the wall. She may attempt to reintroduce a softer version of the old pattern, arriving with half confessions and lessons she has supposedly learned. You will meet her with humane calm. You will bless her path without stepping onto it. You will feel no heat in your chest, no rush of triumph, only the sweet stability that comes when you do not need to be believed to be free. This is how the mask dissolves, not because you tore it away, but because the frequency it relied on is no longer available in you. Betrayal has done its unintended holy work. It has returned you to the inviolable ground at the center of your being. From there, Sagittarius, your arrow no longer sprays light hoping the right hearts will catch it. It draws a single clean line through the air. Toward purpose, toward friendships that reciprocate, toward rooms that do not tense your breath. The shadow behind the smile is not yours to expose. The truth is already doing that, in soft increments without spectacle. Your task is simpler and more daring. Keep your fire honest. Refuse to perform at altars that require your diminishment. Walk out of rooms that smell of sugar and dissonance. Trust the lantern. Trust the wind on your skin when you step outside. Trust the feeling of your own name when you say it in a quiet kitchen at dawn, and the light answers by widening. This is the gate. You have passed through it not by force but by fidelity to yourself. And on the other side, the world does not look new, you do. Gate 2, the quiet reversal. Truth returns without force. Sagittarius, the second gate does not roar open. It does not shatter walls or demand trumpets to announce its presence. Instead, it arrives in a hush, the same way dawn seeps across the horizon long before the first birds dare to sing. You may not even notice it at first. What you do notice is a shift in the air, a recalibration in your chest, the way your body begins to release tension you hadn't realized it was holding. You exhale one evening and realize the exhale is longer, easier, cleaner than any breath you've taken in months. That is how reversal begins, not with proof laid on the table, but with truth whispering back into your life, uninvited yet undeniable. The woman who once carefully adjusted the lens through which others saw you. She is still moving through the world in familiar patterns. But you, Sagittarius, are no longer participating. And that small refusal alters everything. Energy is not static. It circulates. When you step out of an old current, it weakens. When you reclaim your light, distortions lose their magnet. At first, this change is almost imperceptible. A colleague who once turned away from you during lunch now lingers by your desk a few seconds longer. A friend who stopped inviting you to gatherings suddenly mentions your name with warmth in a group chat. Nothing overt. Nothing you could screenshot. Yet your intuition recognizes it. Their hearts have begun to remember you. This is the quiet reversal. No apologies are spoken aloud. No one confesses that they doubted you. And yet in their eyes something softens. They may greet you with an awkward smile, a hesitant question, a lowered gaze that does not know how to articulate remorse. You do not need their words, Sagittarius. You never did. Their small shifts are not about validating you. They are simply evidence that truth cannot stay buried. Like a seed under stone, it presses upward until even the hardest surfaces crack. The beauty of your sign is that you do not crave vengeance. When others fall short, your instinct is to understand, to forgive, to move forward. That generosity has sometimes made you vulnerable. But in this gate it becomes your strength. Because the reversal is not yours to engineer. It unfolds naturally, like gravity rediscovering its pull. The people who drifted from you may try to circle back. Some will test the waters cautiously. Others may arrive as if nothing ever happened, hoping continuity can replace confession. And here is the lesson. You do not have to let everyone back in. You may if it nourishes your soul. But you are not obligated. Reversal does not require reconciliation. It requires recognition. Recognition that you were never wrong to trust your intuition. Recognition that you were never as invisible as they made you feel. Recognition that your soul always knew. And now the world is beginning to catch up. Sagittarius, I want you to picture this through lived example. Imagine a Sagittarian artist who poured their heart into collaborative projects, only to watch as their ideas were siphoned, reframed, and praised under another name. For months, invitations dwindled. Their presence was tolerated rather than welcomed. They carried the ache quietly, thinking maybe they had misread the room. And then one afternoon, a message arrives from a former collaborator. I've been thinking about you. Do you want to grab coffee? The message is casual, almost too casual, but it hums with something deeper. An acknowledgement unspoken, that something about the old story no longer fits. The artist does not rush to say yes. They sit with the invitation. They feel their own chest first, asking, do I want this? Does this serve my light? For the first time, their answer does not depend on nostalgia or guilt. It depends on resonance. This is reversal as healing. Not people returning to confirm your truth, but you standing steady enough that you no longer need confirmation. Their steps toward you may feel tender, even trembling, but your step toward yourself is solid. And when you stand solid, you notice something miraculous. The betrayal no longer hurts the same way. The sting dissolves not because time erased it, but because you reclaim the meaning. Betrayal was not the final word. It was the veil you walked through to claim a clearer sight. In Gate 2, karma is not a punishment handed down from above. It is balance restoring itself. The woman who wove shadows around you begins to notice silence where once she commanded attention. Her stories, once accepted without question, now hang in the air too long, their edges fraying. The same listeners who once leaned in now glance away, sensing dissonance without needing to name it. This is not because you exposed her. You didn't have to. Energy speaks louder than argument. Once your field shifted, her mask could no longer magnetize. And here is the grace, Sagittarius. You do not need her downfall to feel complete. You are not waiting for her to crumble. You are too free for that. Your task is simpler, to remain unshaken by her choices, to remain loyal to your own flame. Let her carry her lessons. Let her face her mirrors. You owe her no audience. You owe yourself presence. There is also a deeper reversal unfolding, one most people miss: the return of your inner trust. For so long, you doubted your intuition because it lacked evidence. You gaslit yourself into silence, thinking perhaps you were overreacting. But now, standing in this gate, you see how right you were. You see how your soul knew all along. And with that, a deeper healing occurs. You begin to believe yourself again. That is the most powerful reversal of all. Sagittarius, this is also the gate of physical and emotional release. You may notice an urge to shift your surroundings. Old clothes suddenly feel heavy with memory. A gift from her tucked in a drawer seems to vibrate with stale energy. Without ceremony, you begin to let these things go. You fold the shirt one last time and place it in a bag for donation. You open the window and breathe in air that feels startlingly pure. You rearrange your desk so that your work no longer carries the imprint of her shadow. These are not small acts. They are rituals of reclamation. In each act you affirm, I no longer carry what was never mine. And then the reversal deepens into something subtler. You begin to notice synchronicities. A song on the radio that speaks the exact words your heart needed. A stranger's glance that lingers with unexpected kindness. A sentence in a book that feels like it was written solely for you. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. The universe is reminding you. You are no longer abandoned in your truth. Life itself is circling back to say, I see you. I trust you. I will walk with you. In this gate, Sagittarius, you also learn the paradox of justice. That it is not about being vindicated in the eyes of others, but about no longer needing to be. When you stop craving recognition from those who doubted you, you become untouchable. Their apologies, if they ever come, are simply echoes. You already freed yourself. You already restored your light. And in that restoration, you rise above the frequency where betrayal once thrived. So let the reversal unfold. Let people return awkwardly. Let truth shine through cracks without your assistance. Do not rush to narrate the process. Do not demand confessions. Do not rehearse speeches. Instead, notice the new spaciousness in your chest. Notice the way you walk into rooms and feel no need to defend yourself. Notice the silence that once felt suffocating now feels serene. This is your reversal. Not loud, not theatrical, but steady and unshakable. And remember this. The woman who once cast shadows may still walk the earth in her old patterns, but she no longer walks in your field. Her presence feels thinner now, like smoke that no longer finds purchase in your lungs. She can knock, but you do not need to answer. You have stepped into a different frequency. One where only truth, only reciprocity, only genuine warmth can breathe. This is the promise of Gate 2. That life always remembers, that truth always returns, that what is yours cannot be stolen forever. And when it comes back, you will not clutch it desperately. You will smile softly, recognizing it as something you never truly lost. You simply had to walk far enough into yourself to find it again. Gate 3, the silent purification, rebirth in the everyday. Sagittarius, Gate 3 is not marked by fireworks or applause. It is not a blazing revelation announced with thunder in the skies. No, it arrives much more quietly, almost deceptively, hidden in the simplest corners of your daily life. This is the gate of purification, and unlike the reversal of Gate 2, which showed you how the truth naturally returns, Gate 3 teaches you how to release the weight of what has lingered. It is not about confronting others, nor about winning back what you lost. It is about the deep, almost sacred act of clearing space. Inside your heart, inside your home, inside the frequency of your being. You may notice it begins suddenly, as if a switch flipped overnight. One morning you wake up and feel restless in your own room. The blanket that once felt comforting now seems heavy. The desk you once loved feels cluttered. You glance at an old photograph on the shelf and sense a strange heaviness in your chest. Nothing is wrong, but everything feels different. And this is your soul speaking. It is time to let go. This is not letting go with anger, Sagittarius. This is not slamming the door or burning bridges. This is the soft, almost reverent kind of release that comes when you realize something no longer belongs, and you are ready to set it free. The sweater given to you by the very woman whose whispers once distorted your image, you fold it one last time, not with rage but with gratitude, and place it in a bag to donate. The messages you once scrolled through late at night, searching for proof of loyalty, You delete them not as erasure, but as an act of mercy to your own spirit. The trinkets, the notes, the objects carrying energy that no longer resonates, you begin to clear them out, not because anyone told you to, but because your body, your intuition, your soul is asking for fresh air. This is purification. And in Sagittarius fashion, it doesn't stop with the external. Your sign is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, of meaning, of wisdom. You are not content with tidying the surface. You dig deeper, seeking the inner freedom that makes the outer clearing inevitable. So while your hands move across shelves, your mind begins to sift through old stories. How many times did you tell yourself that doubting your intuition meant you were weak? How many times did you replay the conversations where you stayed silent, wishing you had spoken? How many times did you shrink your truth so others would remain comfortable? These stories rise like dust as you clean, and instead of inhaling them again, you open the window and let them drift out. Purification is not glamorous. No one sees you rearranging your bookshelves at midnight. No one notices when you pause to breathe as you drop an old keepsake into a donation box. But these acts matter more than anyone realizes, because they are rituals. Without candles, without chants, without ceremony, you are conducting one of the most sacred rituals of all. The ritual of returning your soul to its own clean space. And then something unexpected happens. As you let go of these old layers, you begin to notice new synchronicities flooding in. A song you haven't heard in years drifts through a cafe speaker, carrying the exact line you needed to hear. A stranger makes eye contact with you in a way that feels like recognition. A book falls off the shelf in a store and opens to a page that speaks directly to your situation. These are not coincidences, Sagittarius. They are confirmations that your soul's purification is making room for divine alignment. When you clear the stagnant, you create a vacuum, and life rushes to fill it with what truly belongs. You may also find yourself drawn to change your routines. The foods you once craved now feel too heavy. The music you used to play no longer matches your vibration. The conversations that once entertained you now feel shallow. This is not boredom. It is growth. Your frequency is shifting, and everything in your life is being reevaluated through that lens. And here lies the true essence of Gate 3. You are not just letting go of people, objects, or habits. You are letting go of the identity that betrayal once forged in you. For so long, you may have unconsciously carried the label of the misunderstood one, the betrayed one, the one who stayed silent. But as you purify, you realize those were never your true names. They were temporary roles, assigned by circumstance, painted over your soul by someone else's insecurity. And now you wipe the canvas clean, not to erase your past, but to reclaim the space to paint something new. This purification also extends to the body. You may feel the need to move differently, stretch, walk, dance, or even cry in a way that feels like exhaling the last remnants of what weighed you down. Do not ignore these impulses. They are part of the cleansing. Your tears, your sweat, your laughter. These are the sacred waters washing you free. But Sagittarius, here is the miracle. Purification does not leave you empty. It fills you with peace. The moment you set something down, an old memory, an old wound, an old belonging, you feel lighter, as though your chest has made space for something vast and gentle. That space is not frightening. It is liberating. It is the echo of your soul saying, "Thank you for making room for me." And this is when rebirth begins, not with fanfare, not with announcements, but with subtle clarity. You start to see yourself differently. You are no longer the archer weighed down by others' distortions. You are the archer standing tall, bow in hand, ready to aim at a horizon that belongs only to you. The betrayal that once clouded your vision is no longer the centerpiece of your story. It is now simply one chapter, already written, already closed. From this gate, you will notice how life begins to move around you in response. The people who once doubted you may sense the shift, though they may not understand it. Some will try to return, seeking access to your new light. Others will quietly step away, unable to tolerate a frequency they can no longer manipulate. Neither outcome requires your effort. You do not chase, you do not resist. You simply continue to purify. And with each small act of release, you step more fully into the truth of who you are. Sagittarius, Gate 3 is your sacred pause. It is the inhale before a new adventure, the silence before the bowstring is drawn back. You are not being asked to leap yet. You are being asked to create enough inner stillness that when the time to leap comes, you will fly without hesitation. The universe is rearranging itself in your favor, but it cannot land in a cluttered space. By purifying your life, you are preparing the landing strip for blessings you cannot yet imagine. So move gently, Archer. Fold what needs folding. Release what no longer belongs. Open the window, let in the air, let the old energy dissolve. This is not a loss. It is the prelude to expansion. For every object released, a blessing has room to arrive. For every old story laid to rest, a new truth rises. And when you have cleared enough, you will feel it. The subtle hum of your soul, vibrant and alive, no longer muffled under layers of sorrow. That hum is the sound of rebirth. It is the sound of you coming home, not to someone else, not to the past, but to yourself. Gate 4, Awakening into Sovereignty. The untouchable flame. Sagittarius, we have arrived at Gate 4. The threshold where the old dissolves completely and a new horizon begins to glow. The earlier gates prepared you for this. Gate 1 awakened your intuition. Gate 2 reversed betrayal into clarity. Gate 3 purified your inner and outer world. Now Gate 4 opens you into awakening. Not the fragile awakening of someone still trembling from what they've endured, but the sovereign awakening of a soul who has walked through fire and discovered they are fire itself. This is the stage where you begin to understand the fullness of your sensitivity. For so long you may have seen it as a liability, something that made you too vulnerable, too easily wounded, too open to betrayal. But here the veil falls away, and you realize that what others once exploited in you is actually your greatest strength. Sensitivity, Sagittarius, is your compass. It does not make you weak, it makes you wise. It is not a burden. It is a flame that illuminates the truth others refuse to see. And when you finally stop apologizing for it, when you stop suppressing it to make others comfortable, something extraordinary happens. You step into sovereignty. This is not dominance, not control, not superiority. Sovereignty is the quiet, radiant knowing that no one defines you but you. It is the unshakable foundation that cannot be distorted by whispers, by lies, by manipulations. It is standing in the center of your life with such clarity that nothing external can unseat you. Imagine, Sagittarius, that you are the archer standing on a mountain at dawn. Behind you lies the forest of betrayal, the thickets of doubt, the shadows of old wounds. Around you the air is clean, the sky wide, the silence sacred. In your hand is the bow. Not a weapon of war but a tool of direction. You do not aim at enemies, you aim at horizons. You do not shoot to wound, you shoot to declare. This is where my truth goes and I will follow. This is the essence of Gate 4. You no longer live in reaction. You live in creation. The woman who once distorted your light no longer matters, not because she has been defeated, but because she has become irrelevant. She cannot reach you not because you have barred the door, but because she no longer exists on the frequency you inhabit. Betrayal can only survive in the field of reaction. You have moved beyond it, into a frequency where only authenticity breathes. And here, Sagittarius, the universe meets you. This is when opportunities begin to arrive like arrows returning to your quiver, each one carrying the energy of alignment. A project you once dreamed of but abandoned suddenly resurfaces. A connection you thought lost reappears, not in the old vibration, but in a new, cleaner one. Even strangers may enter your life with uncanny timing, as if they have been sent by destiny to remind you that you are not alone. These are not coincidences. They are affirmations that when you step into sovereignty, life reorganizes itself around you. But Gate 4 is not only about blessings arriving. It is about you embodying a new presence. People will sense it even if they cannot explain it. Some will soften in your presence, feeling the calm steadiness of your light. Others may fidget, uncomfortable, because your clarity unmasks what they would rather keep hidden. Neither reaction is your responsibility. You do not need to explain your transformation. You simply live it. Your very existence becomes the declaration. I am whole, I am untouchable, I am sovereign. And yet, Sagittarius, do not mistake sovereignty for isolation. Awakening is not about standing alone in cold strength. It is about learning to stand so firmly in your truth that you can finally welcome relationships that honor it. For the first time in a long time, you will feel the possibility of belonging without compromise. Friendships where you do not have to prove your loyalty. Love where you do not have to shrink your flame. Work that does not demand you betray your own values. This is the harvest of sovereignty. Not the absence of others, but the arrival of those who can finally meet you where you truly are. You may find yourself guided toward new practices that anchor this awakening. Perhaps meditation feels easier, deeper, like dropping into the core of yourself instead of battling your thoughts. Perhaps writing or creating art becomes a mirror where your inner wisdom flows freely. Perhaps your body feels stronger, asking for new rhythms, new forms of movement that express the fire returning to your spirit. These practices are not obligations. They are the natural expression of your sovereignty, ways to embody the flame that has always lived within you. And the most profound shift of Gate 4? You stop needing closure. You stop needing apologies. You stop needing anyone to validate what you went through. Not because you have numbed yourself, but because you have awakened beyond the level where such needs exist. Closure, Sagittarius, is no longer external. It is the simple act of standing in your own light, knowing you are already free. Apologies cannot give you that. Revenge cannot give you that. Only awakening can. This does not mean you will never feel pain again. It means pain will never define you again. It may visit like a passing storm, but it will not collapse you, because you know now that storms clear the air, and your flame is eternal. You are no longer a seeker of justice. You are justice embodied, simply by existing in truth. And as you stand in this awakening, Sagittarius, you will notice something else. The horizon calls again. Not the horizon of escape, not the restless chase of the past, but the horizon of expansion. Sovereignty is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of the next adventure, the one where you walk not as the betrayed but as the awakened, not as the misunderstood but as the sovereign archer who knows where they are aiming. So let Gate 4 be the moment you step fully into yourself. Let it be the threshold where you stop asking, "Who will see me?" and begin declaring, "I see myself, and that is enough." From here, everything else, love, belonging, abundance, peace, flows naturally, because it is drawn to the light of sovereignty. Sagittarius, you are the flame no betrayal could extinguish. You are the truth no whisper could distort. You are the sovereign soul, walking into a new chapter not with noise, but with quiet, radiant certainty. Conclusion: the archer's new horizon. Sagittarius, beloved child of fire and sky, we have walked through the 4 gates together. Each one was not a test you needed to pass, but a layer of remembering, an unraveling of everything false so that your true flame could rise. In the opening, you heard the whisper. You recognized that the universe does not speak to you in thunder, but in subtle signs. A flickering light, a restless dream, a silence that feels louder than words. You discovered that your intuition is not a weakness, but the soft drumbeat of truth that guides your every step. At Gate 1, you faced the unveiling, the betrayal that once cast shadows over your trust. You learned that deception does not last forever, and that even lies eventually collapse under the weight of your inner knowing. You realize that you do not need evidence to honor your instincts. Your soul is evidence enough. At Gate 2, you walked through reversal, where the tide turned not because you fought, but because you shifted. The woman who once tried to distort your light lost her power, not through your resistance, but through your rising frequency. And you discovered the most sacred truth. Justice does not arrive in arguments. It arrives in presence, in silence, in the quiet dignity of a soul that refuses to bend. At Gate 3, you began the purification, the silent ritual of letting go. No candles, no chants. Just the simple grace of clearing space, releasing what no longer belonged, and trusting that emptiness is not loss but preparation. You found that rebirth often begins in the smallest acts. Opening a window, discarding an old object, closing a door without bitterness. And finally, at Gate 4, you stepped into sovereignty. Here you awakened into the full fire of your being, realizing that sensitivity is not fragility but sacred sight, that betrayal cannot define you, and that closure does not need to come from outside. It is born the moment you declare, "I am whole, I am free, I am untouchable in my truth." Now, Sagittarius, you stand at the edge of a new horizon. Your bow is drawn, not to wound, but to aim your life toward the expansive future calling your name. No one holds your arrow but you. No one decides your truth but you. And as you walk forward, remember this. You are not meant to live hidden in cramped rooms of judgment. You are meant to roam under wide skies, to feel deeply, to love fiercely, to expand without apology. This is not merely survival. This is your sovereignty. This is not the end of your journey. This is the beginning of your flight. So take a deep breath, Sagittarius. The universe has watched you endure. It has seen you break and still choose light. And now it rises with you, arranging blessings in your path. Not because you begged, not because you proved yourself, but because you remembered who you are. Walk forward. The horizon is waiting. And it was always yours.